Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. I am Mike B, and today I'm going to be answering a question from the comment section. A few days ago, from the time me filming this video, I can't remember your username. Somebody asked what the measuring thing was on the rifle in one of my other videos. And I didn't quite understand the question. I thought he might have meant the rear sight ladder, and then somebody else says, yeah, I think that's what he means. So we're just going to assume that's what he meant. And yeah, so I'm going to just kind of talk today about what a rear sight ladder is, how it was used, and I'm going to show you a few different styles that were used on a few different rifles from around the same time period. So if you're familiar with just like a Winchester Model 94 or something like that, you'll be used to what's known on a military rifle as the battle sight. So that's this guy right here. Sorry, I don't have the angle to actually look down the sight and show you that. But that's a little notch that you look through and you line it up with the front sight, whatever that may be. And just for reference, if this is, yeah, I think this is what you were talking about. So there's the bolt, there's the action, the receiver, the handguard, and then this ladder thing, right? So the intention was back in the late 19th century, so late 1800s. The idea for warfare was still kind of not totally out of the old world of the massive line battles and just guys lining up at 100 to 200 yards, blasting the shit out of each other with large bore black powder rifles and muskets. It was kind of that same mentality, just at a farther distance. The people wanted to, have the same kind of volley fire style combat, just at 1,000 to 1,500 meters instead of 100 to 150 meters. So with that, with the advent of small caliber smokeless powder, farther shooting, more accurate rifles like this one, this is a Chilean model 1895 Mauser, but I like this ladder to start out with just to explain what it is for, because it's very simple. So yes, you were correct that these are some form of measuring, but the measuring isn't done by this, it's actually done by the soldier. You have to estimate what distance you are at, or at that time, a lot of times, NCOs and specific or non-commissioned officers and officers would be the ones guessing or figuring out the range, and then would direct their, soldiers to set their sights for this distance and do volley fire. Later on, when that kind of became not so much the standard practice, and like in the First World War, then it was up to the individual soldier a lot of times to figure out what distance the enemy was at and adjust accordingly. So now you can see, so this is just one model. Here's what it looks like from the side. You got this little button right here that's got little springs on it. And you can see that this does move up and down. Well, actually it doesn't when it's down like this. This is one style. So what you do to use this is you flip this up like that. And, I did not think about this angle at all before. I just wanted to get a close-up to kind of explain it to you. So, all right, just pretend that it's flipped straight up, right? And you say, or your battle sight, I think on this one is 400 meters, 300 or 400 meters, and then it goes to 5, 6, 7, 8, etc., etc. So right now we can see it's actually on the 500 mark. So we're going to say, okay, the enemy is at 800 meters. So we're going to move this slider up to the 800 line right there. You see how it's not lined up with the 7, but it is lined up with the 8 on that side. So we'd be at 800 yards, or sorry, I'm from the United States, bear with me, meters. And then you would theoretically be able to hit your target with the standard military load of whatever caliber you were firing, in this case 7x57 millimeter Mauser. And yeah, and if you wanted to do volley fire, say you're standing at 2,000 meters, bam, we're gonna go all the way up here. All this does is it makes you have to raise the front sight up to meet the rear sight notch that you can see right there. And you'd still use it like you'd use the battle sight, where you're putting the notch in there, but your target's obviously gonna be very small. It wasn't a precision kind of thing. It was just more, there's their line the sights up the best that you can at that distance, and it theoretically should come very close to hitting the enemy if you do everything correct. This, again, it wasn't really practiced as much as individual guerrilla warfare. A lot of these Spanish lineage Mausers, the 1893 model, the Chileans, a lot of the South American and Spanish Mausers, found a different style of combat to be used, so a lot of the volley fire wasn't really used, but nevertheless, these sights were designed for that. So I hope that kind of shows you a little bit basically how to use these sights. When this is done, I'll show you some of the rear sights here really quick, but that's just the basic gist of it. I hope that explains it, and now we'll move on and I'll show you a few different styles. So this rifle is a French model 1886-93 Lebel rifle, chambered in 8x51 rimmed, but it's got a really cool, unique rear sight that's very, very, it's typical late 19th century, more so the 1870s and 80s, to be honest. You'll notice that it's flipped all the way forward, and that is to allow the soldier, to use the battle sight, which I'm not going to be able to look down, is located here, and it only is visible when the rear sight is folded down. This sight is, we'll get into what it's sighted for. It gets kind of complicated, but once you get it, it's actually fairly easy. So in order to use the battle sight, which I believe on this one is going to be, yeah, it's going to be 300 meters. It's 1 to 300 meters, something like that. You have to have this whole thing flipped forward. I think there's one more that is like this as well that I'll show you in a little bit. So for 300 and below, that's your battle sight. You're gonna have that thing flip forward. Now, this thing's got like a 3-stage part of using this, because you'll see on the side, once you've got it flipped back, let me try to get to stay on the table here, there are these numbers, right? So you got 4, which is 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, etc., etc. So you use the slide like you would on the Chilean Mauser, and you just slide it up. So this would be, let's see, really quick, we'll go up to 600 because we're set at the 6 right there. It's in that little groove. You see that? And if we want to go to 7 and 8, and then if we want to go even further, out past 1,000, sorry, if I say yards, again, it's from the US. I don't say meters a lot unless I'm talking about military stuff. So this is when you're going to get into your 900, 1,000, whatever. And you can see the numbers on the sight ladder, just like on the Mauser, right? So right now we're sitting, what are we sitting at? We're sitting at 1,800 meters. You can check that out right there. Oh, maybe you can't, because my camera work is really crappy. But yeah, it's going to be set at 18, and this does not have a true volley fire sight on it, but we'll show you a couple different styles. So this is another fairly complicated but really common style in the late 19th century on different weapons. This is another style you're going to see specifically on European firearms in the late 19th century as well. And a lot of Italian rifles and Swiss rifles are going to have this weird style of this ramp with these numbers on it. You can see that right there. This is an 1891 Carcano rifle from Italy. It was their infantry service weapon through World War II. And you notice the sight's really weird. It's got a lot going on, even though it looks simple. So if you wanted to use the battle sight on this, which I still don't have enough information on exactly how to use the rear sight, but I'm just going to show you how this one works. You have to push this plunger in, right, on the side, and then you raise the bar up, and then, so say you want to shoot at 1,300, or we'll just go to 1,200 meters right here. Well, there, it's set to 1,200 meters. You see where the ramp actually hits the line and it's offset on that side. So you've got 1,200, and then, it would be the same concept. It's going to raise your front end up. Now, for the battle sight on this, it's going to be the same as the Lebel 1886-93. You have to push that thing all the way forward. You see that groove in the stock? That is what it's there for. So in order to use the giant V-notch battle sight on the Carcano, you have to put the sight all the way forward, and then if you want to shoot at farther distances, you just continue to go up like that. So that's another style that's very commonly encountered with ladder sights. This is for if you're at an antique shop or whatever. I'm going to show you some of the more complicated ones because a lot of them are going to be easier than even the Mauser ones, like on the Mosin Nagant and all that stuff. But I'll show you a Mosin Nagant that the sights actually aren't really non-complicated on. That's a mouthful. So this is also an 1891 design rifle. So you notice a theme here, late 19th century. Rifles had these kind of sights on them through the mid 20th century, but this is just where it kind of began, and they started experimenting with different kinds. That's why I'm showing you all these. So this is a Mosin Nagant model 1891. And you can see right here that the sights start out at 4, but we're actually a notch below that. We're on 3, which is the battle sight, okay? Which you'll see is just a V-notch like most of them. So I'm just going to show you that really quick. That's the view, kind of looking somewhat down it. I should make a video on looking down sights of all these rifles. That'd be pretty cool. Let me know if you want to see that in the comments. I'm sure you guys do. I'll try to figure that out. It's never the same as looking at it in real life. Anyway, for this one, same story. You just push in these little buttons, and there. Now we're going to be shooting at 600 arshins. What? Yes, arshins. It's the Russian style of measurement. It's approximately, I believe, if I get it wrong, just correct me once in the comments. I'll pin it. I believe it's around 26 inches. So it's not quite a yard. It's not quite a meter. So that's 600 arshins. It's something to be very considerate of when you're dealing with rifles and weapons in general from countries that may or may not have used meters and yards. and figure out what the rifle is actually sighted in for, because there's a big difference between 600 yards and meters and 600 arshins and yards or meters. So, but anyway, yeah, and then so this one does the same thing kind of as the Lebel, and then you flip this thing up, and you've got your ladder again. I keep hitting the camera stand, sorry about that. And you move this thing up and down, it goes all the way up to a very, very, very optimistic 3,200 meters. No, arshins. So it's actually probably at around 21 to 2,200 yards, just going as a rough estimate. I know it's not going to be at all the same. I can't math that well. That's why I like history. Anyway, so that's just another kind of design. I'll show you two more and we'll wrap the video up. Okay, really quickly, this is a Steyr M95 long rifle rear sight. So you can see it's pretty much just a ladder sight. It's only got the numbers on the one side and all that stuff. But you'll notice at the top of this, there is a sight for a very, very optimistic 2,600 meters. I mean, that's definitely volley fire. So you lift this thing up, and it's basically like a long-range grenade launcher at this point. You're just kind of throwing the notch in there, and the rifle's canted very high at this point. It's going to look like that, even though you're shooting a target that's, you know, there, but it's going to be 2,600 yards or meters away. So yeah, that's another kind of sight. Some of these rear sights, I forget which exact models have them, will have the notch on the top of the ladder as well. Otherwise, this functions just the same as the rest of them. All right, we'll get to one of the most complicated rear sights, and you won't probably be surprised what country it comes from. One honorable little mention that I forgot about, and I definitely just wanted to, because it's one of my personal favorite sights, is the German Langefetzier sight on the Gewehr 98. Also the Peruvian model 19 something had the same kind of sight on there. Basically, it's just a gaudy late 19th century. No real reason why they designed it like this, I haven't found out. It just looks cool, and it does work quite well. Standard V-notch, but look at that. That whole thing pops up. It's actually a very easy sight to use. So you go up to 2,000 meters right there. That's your max distance. And look at how high that rear sight is elevated. But yeah, it's a very easy sight to use. It just looks really weird from the side because it's kind of like a, people call it the roller coaster sight, and you can see why. All right, I'm sorry. We'll get on and then I'll end the video. So if you're really new to surplus firearms or just firearms in general, this is arguably one of the most complicated, convoluted rear sights you'll probably come across. And if you're a collector of American firearms, you will probably agree with me that Americans love to shoot at far distances with really tiny, very target-oriented sights. And they make them complicated, and they're really precise and everything, and they're just overly engineered most of the time. This is on the 1903. The Craig Jorgensen rifles were they're pioneering the complicated rear sights. But this one takes the cake. Although it is very cool and it is designed for a marksman, not just a soldier, but everybody that had one of these wasn't a marksman. These are fantastic sights. So this is actually battle sighted. Your battle sight notch is right there. This is battle sighted for 500 yards. Okay, so basically if you're shooting at somebody within 500 yards, or say they're at, 100 yards and they're running at you, you literally have to aim damn near at their nuts to hit them in the chest. It's so high up. To actually drop the sight down to like 100 yards, you have to flip this sight up, and you are going to be looking through this aperture. I don't know, I'm going to try to get this as close as possible so you can see just exactly how complicated this is. So you have to flip it up, and then you can see, you really can't, hold on, let me try to wipe that off a little bit, but you can see kind of, that starts at 1, or no, they're not even marked, yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you see how small this is compared to the other ones? And to move this one, you have to turn this little knob right here, and it is super precise. It's very touchy, so it moves at very very precise rates. So if I wanted to say, I think my target is at 450 yards, right? So we'll go right there, and I'm gonna lock this guy down at 450. Sorry, let me do this off camera. It's really kind of unwieldy. So I'm gonna lock that down at 450, right? And I'm gonna be using this aperture sight. Now, if you see right above that sight, there's another sight that you can use. Oh, look at this. I'm at 450, or I was at 100, and now I'm at 8, so you can use that sight too. It's really weird. And then this knob right here rotates. I'm not going to mess with it because it's actually zeroed perfectly, but it rotates for windage. This entire rear sight ladder will move this way or that way. You can see it's not perfectly centered. And that's where you actually tell your positioning right there and all that stuff. It's very complicated and convoluted. So also one of the coolest rear sights. I just find it's a pain in the ass to use because it's a target sight. I could not imagine trying to use that in combat, but I'm sure those guys were proficient as hell with it. So I guess that's all I've got. I think I might have gone farther into it than you would have liked. You probably just wanted a simple explanation, but hey, I'm a nerd. I love this stuff, and maybe you learned something. So thanks for asking that question. As basic as it was, I sometimes I need to be reminded that there's people that don't have the knowledge that I do because they haven't been doing it for 20 years, and that I need to kind of come down sometimes and be able to answer the basic questions like I had back when I was first getting into this stuff. So thank you for asking that. I don't think anybody gave you crap about it being a dumb question, because it actually wasn't. It's a pretty cool topic. And it's not just, military surplus firearms aren't the only ones that have these kind of sights. There's a lot of civilian firearms that they might not have it up to 2,000 yards or meters, but they'll have, 300, 400, 500 yards or meters, or not arshins, because that hasn't been a thing in a while. But so yeah, you'll see this on civilian firearms as well, but predominantly on military guns. Anyway, thank you for asking that question. I appreciate it. Hopefully I answered it and a little bit more. If you learned something, let me know. Also, if you are new to the channel, or even if you're not, if you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do that. Like this video. And if you want to consider becoming a financial supporter of the channel to allow me to make cool content like this, to hopefully teach people more about this awesome hobby, there's two ways you can do that. One is to become a Patreon supporter, and the link to that is in the description. Also, you can now become a channel member. $5 a month or more on either platform gets you into my Discord server, which is really fun, and a lot of information is exchanged there. I learned stuff on there. It's very interesting. And your support financially actually just helps me be able to do content that I otherwise would not be able to afford just simply funding out of pocket. So this year's been great, 2020. Thanks to all my supporters financially, past and present. And thank you to everybody who just watches the videos, shares them, gives them a thumbs up, and supports me that way if you can't do it financially, which is totally fine. So I appreciate you watching. Hopefully you learned something. I just kind of want to teach people about this stuff because I loved all this stuff. So we'll see you on the next video.